Hipper here. So I thought it was about time that I did a video on, the full philosophy of not just my channel, but also me playing World of Warships Legends in general. Because as you know, I don't really have any traditional builds, meta builds, cookie cutter builds, whatever you want to call it. That's just not how I play this game, not my philosophy, not how I enjoy this game here. And in the past I've taken some criticism about that, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But in this video I'll try to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. So for example, I'm running an Agile build on Edinburgh, and that works well, and also Agile build on Hipper, and it works well. And of course on Charles Martel, the original, and I also run a cruiser commander on my Tashkent. It's like very controversial. And then I run Soundwave on Amalfi, and I run Pickup on Brandenburg, and what else do? We run Dunkirk on Chambord, and on Le Terrible I run a cruiser commander as well, outrageous. And then on Tallinn I run a ghost build with Lightful, and on Asashu I run a dual torp build with Togo, and on Z39 I run a full sonar build with a cruiser commander, outrageous again. And on Agile I run an Agile Agile. So that's just some examples there, and none of them are normal, none of them are meta or something that most players use, and that's why they are not cookie cutter builds, because I can't think of anything worse than cookie cutter builds in games. If you don't know what I mean by cookie cutter builds, it basically means that everybody will be using the exact same build in the game because it's the best. So for example, if you've ever played Diablo, then there's a certain armor, there's a certain weapon, and there's a certain ring, and there's a certain this and this. And if you have all those things, you have the best in the game, and that's where the game stops, because you've reached your peak and you can beat down anybody else, except if they're running the exact same build you are, which they probably are. And that's a huge downside to me. Instead, I think of the game in terms of two axes here. One with fun and the other with competitiveness. And of course, some ships are inherently either fun or competitive. Like for example, Cheshire is neither, and Wichita is very competitive. So when you set up your ship or you buy your ship, you can choose to make it completely competitive, which is pretty much what I call a cookie cutter build, or you can choose to make it a lot of fun. And of course, completely fun is probably going to leave you too far behind the rest of the pack. So I kind of think that the red circle here is what you should aim for, somewhere like a nice balance between fun and competitiveness. So let's pick the meta build for Wichita, which is Scott here. At least that's my impression. Like the inspirations could be different, but overall this is what most people choose, and it makes the ship very competitive, yes, but also very boring. So instead I choose to put Kincaid on Wichita, for example, to up the fun factor a little bit and perhaps give up a little bit of competitiveness, but not a lot. What has the most impact on your play performance anyway isn't really the builds, it's more to do with your map awareness and your positioning. So I've been dabbling in, of course, the original Agile build and Ghost builds, and lately I've been dipping my toes into anti-dispersion builds. But as you can see, there's nothing gun focused. That's not my thing, and I think pretty much every other channel out there is all about gun focused builds. So if you want that, there's plenty of sources for that. So if you're unfamiliar with Agile builds, I'll just show quickly here. For example, Kincaid with a double Agile inspiration, that's a full Agile build. And then of course you need the double rudder on the ship as well. But that's just one of the builds that I've been dabbling in and trying out and experimenting with and stuff. But I've also dabbled into what I call ghost builds, where you pretty much use the detectability time after firing your main guns, make that as small as possible, so you can shoot and you can go dark really, really quickly. And it's also very fun, and also a very different way to play the game. And of course you need like primary commander and as like a secondary inspiration to really min-max everything. Basically, that's also another philosophy of mine. And like I said, lately I've been dabbling in the anti-dispersion builds. So I consider none of these builds cookie cutter builds. Not many people run these builds, perhaps Agile, a few people run it, but not a lot, and nothing compared to the people who run Scott in comparison, for example. So I kind of like to compare my approach to Legends to actually playing a game like Skyrim, for example. I know, of course, the games are entirely different, but in Skyrim, it's also like you can shape your character pretty much any way you want, and you do that by picking perks and skills and leveling up in different things. And I mean, it's pretty much the same approach I take to Legends. I know Legends isn't as deep as a real role-playing game, of course, but you can still use this approach here to tailor the ships to your playstyle and actually have a lot more fun playing the game, I think. So another thing I hear a lot is always like, Hipper, he only has Agile commanders. It's just because he doesn't know how to play the more traditional builds. Well, that's not true. I have pretty much every kind of commander upgraded, and not just upgraded, but also maxed. And I have played every build out there, I'm pretty sure I can say that. And when it comes to, for example, cruisers, well then an Agile build is my favorite. Because, like I said earlier in the video, it gives me a very nice balance between being competitive and also being fun to play. Because sure, you can do full competitive builds, and I usually do that when I play Division actually. But when I play solo, I also want a little bit of fun. And if that means I lose 3 or 4 battles more than the pro Discord master race, that's totally fine, because then I have 100 battles where I have a lot of fun instead of 100 battles where I have maybe 50% of the fun, but I win 3 or 4 more battles. So as you can see, I spend a lot of time and a lot of resources on trying out every commander in the game, and I upgrade pretty much anything that's a little bit out of the ordinary. I also have all the reload commanders upgraded. I have all the AP stuff and the HE commanders and whatever, all the meta builds. I can do them and I play them. I just don't play them as much as I play the more exotic builds, which obviously are the ones that I prefer. I have at least one commander of each type for each nation maxed completely, and I usually have probably 2 of each kind actually. And of course that allows me to mix and match everything, and also min and max. Not just mix and match, but also min and max. There's a huge difference. All the different things I want to try out, and I want to measure, and I want to compare against each other. And I mean, that is the fun of this game for me. That is like trying out new builds, see how they work, and if they don't work so well, well then we put it in the mothball basket, and if they work well, then we might actually keep that as a a note, and then perhaps sometime in the future there will be another inspiration that we can then use to improve that build even more. And that's really what I've been doing, and really what I started out doing with my Agile builds. Because in the beginning you couldn't really get very agile cruisers. I think Martel could get a 3.2 second rudder, and these days it's down to 1.9. And yep, well, that's just what happens when the game evolves. And another thing is stuff like Agile builds, they simply can't be done on the PC version of the game because it's completely different, and they don't have all the inspirations and commanders that we do, and the calculations are also different. So on PC there's, for example, nothing called an Agile build to my knowledge. Another thing I hear a lot is that, for example, Agile builds, they have diminishing returns as you get more and more rudder inspirations. And yeah, while that's true below 1.9 second rudder, until then it's only a plus. So for example, let's look at this Edinburgh here, where we have turret on the ship. It's a bit of a smoke concealment build here, and it's really only to show you that I don't have any Agile modules or perks at all. So with this build we get the lowest maneuverability you can get on an upgraded Edinburgh, and that's 66. And notice the artillery is 34 and the concealment is 74. Alright, let's put Fraser on the ship instead. And with this build here, we've gone full out on AP and offensive capabilities, as you can see here. And again, still on the ship itself, we don't have any Agile modules at all. We only have concealment and the fire thingy. So look here, artillery is now 36, so it's up 2. That's it, not a lot. So really, what you get out of your full offensive builds is really tiny. Maneuverability is 70 because Fraser has 3% extra speed, so it doesn't really count, and concealment 68. So let's put an Agile build on the Edinburgh then. So next up we pick Tenant, and it is Tenant, not Mordov here, and we put all the Agile stuff on him that we want, and of course on the ship we also pop double rudder on. And let's have a look now here. So see, the maneuverability is 85. And look at the artillery, it's 35. It's only down 1 from the full artillery build we did before. And like, that's only 1 point, and the maneuverability are almost 20. So yeah, maneuverability obviously makes sense from, you know, a percentage view. And also concealment, you can argue that both of them are, you know, good things to put your points in. I just think concealment builds are really boring, so I don't really run them much, really. So let's take another example here where I look at like the so-called diminishing returns of rudder builds. So here I have Hipper and I have Graf Spee on as a commander because he's not Agile at all. And what I want to show you here is like the steps that the rudder go down as you make the ships more and more Agile. So just have a quick look at Graf Spee here just to say that there's nothing Agile. And on the ship I have 1 rudder modification here, and if you don't have that on, it's like about 11 seconds. With the first rudder mod here, it's 7.7. So I mean, if you pick, you know, the improved acceleration, your rudder shift would actually be just around 11 seconds, which is really, really slow. So let's just have a look here when we put the double rudder on the ship and how that changes the stats. So now we are down to 4.6 seconds. That's a huge difference from the 11 seconds in the beginning. And of course, maneuverability is not just rudder, it's also speed, and speed actually counts more. So before we put an Agile commander on this ship here, the maneuverability is 68. So let's, you know, go in and put Lucians on the Hipper, which is the commander I always use pretty much. And of course he's an Agile commander. So we'll pick him and we'll put him on the ship. And I'll just quickly show you here. I don't have any inspirations on yet. So with just the Agile commander, the maneuverability jumps to 81. And we cut 1.6 seconds or 30% of the rudder shift time. So that's huge, that's massive. Like we jumped from 60 something to 81 maneuverability. So now I will add Takao onto Lucians as an inspiration, and we'll see what difference that makes. So notice that we have a 3-second rudder now. And Takao is supposedly 3%, but that's on the base rudder value. So we pop her on now and we go down to 2.7. That's not 3%, that's more than 10%. So always remember this when someone says that rudder shift builds are bad, because they're not. So let's put the last inspiration on, which is a Sure Lane Baltimore, which you know, gives you 6% faster rudder, and we'll cut another 0.6 off. So just by applying these 2 inspirations here, we've cut 0.9 seconds of the rudder, which is just about 30%. So put them together, it's 9%, but in reality it's 30%. Alright, I hope this cleared up a few things, and if not, well then I hope you enjoyed the video. So I'll see you out there.